What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Friends of Five, brought to you by 5 Reasons Sports Network. We got a great show for you today. Before that, just guys, if you want to support the page, you go onto YouTube. Make sure you the page. Make sure you comment. Turn on those bell notifications so you see everything that comes in. Ethan, oh man, come on, man, what's up with this?
No, now I hear you. I couldn't hear anything Matt was saying. That's why I got off.
All right, it's all good. Welcome to another episode of Friends of Five, guys. We got a great show for you today. Make sure if you want to help.
This is how things run on 5 Reasons Sports. It's
no, honestly,
very off
this
the
is
cuff.
how it runs on Friends of Five. You know, we've got like some. No, I'm just kidding, man.
Well. So we have Ethan Skolnick here. My name is Ryan Lasner. We have Matthew Perdomo. We'll just get into it. The Miami Heat, they had their first preseason game yesterday. Everybody is extremely hyped. Well, it was a scrimmage. Didn't really count.
Yeah.
They played probably the worst team they could have played, which is good. Duncan Robinson, everybody's very excited about him. You know, obviously he started 4 for 5, finished 5 for 8. He got the offensive going. Do you think he's too good too soon at this point? And our team's going to start playing Duncan Robinson a little bit differently?
I mean, at this point, I think everybody knows what he is, you know, so I don't think that him being hot in a scrimmage is going to change anything. You could see that teams were guarding him differently as the season went on as it was. I think what you've seen now is his evolution, which is that, you know, it's not as simple as closing out on him, although Sacramento didn't do that last night. It's not as simple as closing out on him and you're going to shut the option down. He has the ball fake now. He has the one dribble, move that he makes. I mean, when he gets the ball and he's planning to shoot, he is going to shoot. He will figure out a way to shoot. He's been given the ultimate green light. This kind of started with Wayne Ellington. You know, Eric Spoelstra's philosophy changed with Wayne, where he told Wayne, look, you shooting 3, 4, 5 times is not enough for us. We need you shooting 8, 9, 10 times. The numbers bear it out. If a guy is a 35% three-point shooter, from the analytics tell you he should be shooting as much as possible, as long as he's getting clean looks. You have a guy who's been a 43 to 45% three-point shooter. He should be shooting 10 times a game. He is, and I'd be curious for your guys' thoughts on it. This is something we might talk about on Floor's Yours and 5 on the Floor. He's their best offensive weapon right now.
Yeah.
Jimmy provides a lot in terms of his versatility, his ball handling, his finishing, his ability to get to the rim. But the guy on the team that other teams have to take away is not really Jimmy Butler. It's more so Duncan Robinson at this stage. And it's kind of unbelievable considering where he came from. But no, I don't think it's too much too soon. Teams know, and the Heat coaching staff is going to, aim to be a step ahead. And Duncan is the type who's going to take, all of this. The other thing about Duncan that's different than other shooters is his size. I think that's going to make it harder for teams to take him away than to take away a smaller guard.
Gotcha.
What would you say Duncan Robinson's real value is, money-wise for an NBA? Like, I know what he's getting paid now, but what is realistically worth?
And what can he get from Miami?
Well, they're going to re-sign him to an extension. I was told, and again, they're going to be able to re-sign him and go over the cap. So it's not really a financial concern with him. I was told during the season that they viewed him as untouchable, that he had reached the stage of Bam, and Jimmy's untouchable for other reasons. The contract is part of it. The fact that he signed on to your program, you're not trading Jimmy. And you're not trading Bam. And they made the Bam thing very clear. Over the previous 2 years, the only time that I heard Bam was even put on the table was for Kawhi. There were no other deals, and that didn't get very far. But, there were no other deals where he was even a consideration. He was never on the table for Jimmy. I think I think Hero is nearing that status. I think Duncan Robinson has hit that status. The one I think they would part with, and it's kind of where the same thing they got to with Justice, is Nunn. I think that, it's nothing against Kendrick, but because he's actually younger than Duncan, but it's more a product of, he was kind of found money the way they got him. And if they're going to re-sign Goran Dragic, which I think they are going to do, Kendrick Nunn and Goran Dragic long-term, or over the next 3 years, I think would play the same role for this team. I think there's really only room for one of them. and they don't play particularly well together. Eric has tried it and it has really worked. So anyway, long way of answering your question, Matt. They're going to re-sign him to an extension, probably in the $12 to $15 million a year range.
Wow.
And I think that they'll go over the cap. The more interesting conversation to me is, what is Derrick Jones Jr. worth?
Right.
Because I think there are teams around the league that may value him in the $10 million area. And again, we gotta take this back for COVID pricing, right? Okay. I mean, the cap's going to come back.
More discounted.
But there are teams more discounted, but the teams may value him there. But I kind of feel like Derrick Jones Jr. is going to be, and I hate to say this, is going to be one of these guys that gets overvalued by another team and asked to do things that are not really in his skill set, whereas the Heat will play to his skill set. And I think he's going to end up disappointing teams, some other, like a Bulls or a Knicks, a team like that, which won't bring out his full value. But I think that the Heat are prepared to let him go if they feel KZ Okpala is ready. I'd like to see DJJ stay because I think his career would take a much better course if he's here. But my guess is 60% chance he's going to end up getting signed for pretty good money by a bad team.
Has DJ's role diminished with the Heat somewhat?
I mean, we were looking at the numbers, and I think you got to look at what's going to happen in the bubble and what's going to happen going forward. I think they're two different things. The bubble, to me, you're throwing everything out. Like, it's, will they go back to their conventional starting lineup with Myers Leonard and Kendrick Nunn in it, with Robinson, Butler, and Bam? Probably. But I don't think it's going to be like the tight 8-9 man rotation that Eric Spoelstra's typically played. I think it's going to be more, he's just going to throw bodies at teams. I think they're going to be shorter stints. He's going to let people burn themselves out because he knows that his team is deeper than a lot of these other teams, that he has more interchangeable parts. He has more different ways he can play. So I think in the bubble, DJJ is going to have a role because I do think they're going to go 11 deep a lot. And so I think if you look at him, Andre Iguodala, Jay Crowder, at times against Sacramento, they all played together with Jimmy Butler. Now there's not a lot of spacing in that group, particularly if you throw Bam out there. But I think that, I think Eric's looking to see, okay, which these three guys can all defend in different ways. They add something defensively. Andre adds intelligence, Jay adds versatility and strength. DJJ adds, athleticism, long arms, and all that. They all add something, particularly in the zone and in switching. But I think that the decision on how much all of them is going to play is going to come down to one thing. Who makes the open three? Because all three of those guys are going to get those open three looks because other teams are going to try to take Hero away, try to take Jimmy away, try to take Duncan away, to a certain extent take away what Bam does with dribble handoffs. That's the guy who's going to be open. Jay, Andre, and Goran they'll try to take away. Jay, Andre, and DJJ. All three of them made threes last night.
Right.
The guy who makes the three most consistently will play the most. Yeah. I think it's gonna be Andre because I think he's gonna build experience. So, but DJJ will have a role. But the question becomes next year: does DJJ take another leap that lets him hold off Okpala, or does he get squeezed because Andre comes back, Jay maybe re-signs, Okpala's coming? Where are the minutes? And if that's the case, I can see DJJ being told, listen, go get the money somewhere else for 3 years.
Right.
And then you'll be 25 when that's over with.
And then
you can come back and play for a winning team like Miami after that.
Nice.
Yeah.
So there was mention of Andre Iguodala grooming Tyler Hero. Obviously he has the pedigree, he has the championship rings, and so do you take that with a grain of salt, or do you think he's really taking him under his wing?
No, I think that the Heat have a really good structure right now. And I think it's a better structure than most of the teams in the bubble. They've got 6 really hardworking young guys, and with others coming, like Okpala, maybe Gabe Vincent. And then they have Haslam, Dragic, Butler, Iguodala.
Right.
And then Jay Crowder is kind of, it's like J. Cole says, middle child. They don't have a lot of middle children. They've got some older guys with a lot of experience, and they've got a lot of younger guys. Right. Jay's kind of in the middle. But for the most part, that's their structure. And so do I think Andre Iguodala can help Tyler Hero? Absolutely. Iguodala has a reputation. He's a smart guy, okay? He's a bright guy. there are in the NBA sometimes intelligence is not appreciated. I had a long conversation when I thought the Heat had the smartest team in NBA history.
With Battier?
When you had on a team at one time, Shane Battier, James Jones, Chris Bosh, okay, Ray Allen. I mean, these were four of the smartest guys in the league.
Right.
Okay. They had Roger Mason on that team at one point. He was in the Players Association. Udonis Haslem is a bright dude. Okay. Don't let the whole street thing fool you there. All right. LeBron, the highest basketball IQ of all time, perhaps. And Dwayne's pretty smart about certain things. He'll tell you he's not about some things, but he is about certain things. They had a very, very bright team. And I remember having conversations with Shane and Ray and Chris about the fact that intelligent guys sometimes are not appreciated in NBA locker rooms because, sometimes, the coach gets nervous because the players think they know more than the coach. This led to a lot of the battles between Ray and Spo the last year of the Big Three. Andre has a reputation of being one of those guys that can be a little bit challenging to coach at times but if you can get aligned with him, then you're in a really good place because he can really add a lot to a team. I believe, and one of the things if I could get Eric Spoelstra alone, which during quarantine is challenging, one of the things I would love to ask Spo is how much time he spent talking to Andre over the past 4 months. I bet you it was a lot. I bet you that he and Andre got on the same page in a way you can't when you've just made a trade and you're trying to get pieces together. Andre, to me, in that scrimmage, looked like he'd been talking to Spo a lot. He was handling the ball more. He was in the right place on defense. He was pushing Derrick Jones Jr. to the right place on defense. Literally took his palm and pushed him that way. No social distancing. Okay, I think you're starting to see that. So do I think Iguodala can be good for Tyler Hero? I think any influence of a guy who won championships, okay, who accepted a 6-man role, and is a good thing. So, yes.
I know you said that Nunn is probably the most expendable piece that the Miami Heat have. Is there anything that he could do to solidify his role? Like maybe if he could play defense more like Kyle Lowry, because I don't know if they're around the same height. I have to check, but is there anything he can do?
He's a little bigger than Kyle Lowry. The comp. There's 2 comps I have for Kendrick Nunn that are both very positive comps from a previous era. Joe Dumars and John Starks.
Nice.
I think that Kendrick Nunn. I think we may be understating Kendrick Nunn. I feel like at every step, and I've done it, okay? My co-hosts on 5 on the Floor do it. I feel like we kind of have taken it for granted. Like we saw him in Summer League, and I was out there in Vegas, and I was kind of like, okay, he's pretty damn good. He can run a team. He's aggressive at the point of attack. He makes a 3. He's not afraid to shoot. He's confident. He's very serious-minded. And then, it was like, he's going to make this team. And then it was, wow, he's going to start. Okay, and then the first 3 weeks of the season, he lit the world on fire. And then teams started to realize that every time he was coming off that screen, he was shooting. And so they started playing him a shoot, and then he had the Achilles injury. And it took him some time to kind of make the adjustment of, okay, at times I've got to facilitate. I've got just occasionally make a pass. It will help me. And I think he started to pick up on that stuff. Now, defensively, not as much. The reason I make the Starks comparison is because I feel it's a little like Starks in New York. And I'll admit, John Starks was my favorite Knick, okay? And I grew up there. But the reason John Starks kind of came out of the same situation. Undrafted, there were some character concerns, maybe not the same type. He didn't look the part, but he just kept surviving. Like
right.
They had Rolando Blackman, they had Hubert Davis, they had all these other 2 guards. John Starks remained the starter. John Starks was the guy playing against Michael Jordan, okay, in all those series. And I feel like they view him a little that way. The reason I make the Dumars comp is from a body type standpoint, there are some similarities, the ability to play both guard spots. The thing he has to do if he wants to stay here long term is defend like Joe Dumars. And that's the question is, can he be a better point of attack defender? I think he gives effort, but a lot of times he doesn't fight through the screen. And that's going to be the key thing because Hero is a more creative offensive player, has a higher upside. Duncan Robinson is a better shooter, as a pure shooter. Kendrick can do all of those things and is a better mid-range player, but he has to, and I think he's a pretty good finisher, but he only averaged 1.4 free throw attempts per game this year, and the defense has to get better. If those things happen, he may be one of those guys we look at and say every year that we thought they were going to move on from him, and he's a 7-year starter for the Miami Heat. I think it's possible.
Okay.
All right. So Victor Oladipo now is playing in the scrimmage. He might play in the bubble. We had Clay Ferrero on our show last week. He mentioned that Victor Oladipo is the most likely of the big names to come to the Heat. How dangerous do you think the Pacers are if the Heat do match up with them in the postseason and if Oladipo's playing?
Well, I think the Sabonis injury is something to watch. He's got plantar fasciitis, and so the Pacers mix. Yeah, the thing about that one, it hurts, and the other thing is until it snaps, it doesn't get better. But when it snaps, you're out for a long period of time. I mean, this is something Tim Hardaway used to fight all the time. They need him. I still don't love their mix with him and Miles Turner, but they do need him. Oladipo and Brogdon never really got an extended run playing together this year. So they're a little difficult to evaluate. Nate McMillan is probably the most underrated of all the coaches in the East. I think we look at kind of the top 4 in the East. When you look at, there's sort of a murderer's row of coaches there, right? You've got Bud, Spo, Brad Stevens, right? And Nick Nurse just won a championship in his first season, okay? Right. Pretty damn good group. Nate doesn't get talked about as much. Brett Brown doesn't get talked about at all, okay? But I do think that they're very well coached, but I sense something different from them. One of the things Greg Sylvander's talked about on 5 on the Floor, the Pacers have even talked about this, that they're there to survive. Like the Heat have gone into this thing like thinking they can win.
Right.
I feel like with the Pacers, there's so much uncertainty. The owner, there's very few owners who've had a harder time than Mickey during COVID. But 2 of the owners who have, because they're in also entertainment type things or retail, is the Pacers owner, Simon, who owns all the malls. That's not going well. And the Rockets, obviously, their owner is in the casino game. That wasn't going well. And then Mickey's Ramon says Pacers want that participation ribbon. It seems like it. And then you look at obviously the cruise ships. That hasn't gone well. But Indiana has never kept their guys. And so it just doesn't feel like it just feels like Kevin Pritchard's a very good GM, but I feel like they're kind of just stuck in this middle place.
So it's won 5 games.
I don't see them as a serious threat. I do think, look, Philly's a mess. Okay, they're starting a 2nd-round point guard and benching their $20 million a year center. They didn't plan to do that, but obviously I do think they're still, and they lost 3 out of 4 to the Heat, but they're still a tougher matchup. They still have 2 players who can be elite. Josh Richardson, we know what he's capable of, and he played very well against Miami this year.
Right.
And Tobias Harris is not worth what they're paying him, but he can get you 25. Okay, they have enough pieces. I still think they're the tougher matchup. The toughest matchup for Miami in the East to me is Boston. I don't even think it's close. I think it's tougher than Milwaukee. They have 3 two-way wings. And that creates problems because Miami's wings are not really all two-way. Jimmy is, but the other, but with that one, I'd watch Kemba's knee. Kemba has to be at full strength. So I just think Miami is in a really good place. If I've said this on 5 on the Floor, if the season just continued the way that they were playing, I was going to pick them to go out in the first round. I didn't like the way they were playing. They weren't defending. It didn't look like they were incorporating the new pieces. Something looked off.
Right.
Leonard and Hero were hurt, but the break for them, everything favors them. Milwaukee comes back to the pack because they've got older guys who I think are going to take some time to get back in shape, and they lose the momentum of the season. Boston comes back with Kemba nicked up. Philadelphia still seems like a mess. Indiana doesn't know if Oladipo is going to play. Toronto is dangerous to me, and they're finally healthy. But Bam does a hell of a job on Siakam.
Right.
And Kyle Lowry tends to struggle in big games at times. I think that Miami, with its quote unquote culture, its coaching staff, its mix of vets and older guys. And here's the other thing. I was going to mention this on 5 on the Floor. On Floor is yours, but I'll give this to you. I talked to some people associated with the Heat and also with some of the players. And they all think that this seems like a simple thing. The setup in Orlando, the court, okay? Thanks, Dutch. The court, okay, and the background,
Right.
which is dark and simple, is a shooter's background. And I can tell you that the Heat players have all been talking about how they think they're going to kill it in there. They just think that this is going to benefit three-point shooting teams. There's very little distraction. There's very little noise. It is just you and the rim. And if you give Duncan, Robinson, Kendrick Nunn, Goran Dragic, Tyler Hero, Myers Leonard, Kelly Olynyk, look after look after look in that kind of situation, they think they're going to shoot people out of the gym.
Nice.
And that's the thing. The two things that Milwaukee and Toronto are excellent defensively. So Milwaukee is historically good. But the thing that they give up, both teams, is threes. That's their whole defense is designed. We're going to pack the paint, take everything else away. We're going to try to get the right guys to take your threes on the other team. The problem is if you're facing Miami, they might have 3 or 4 snipers out there at the same time. It's a tough matchup. I think the Heat are a really difficult matchup for Milwaukee. I just do in this kind of setting.
So we have Myers Leonard, Goran Dragic, DJJ, and Jay Crowder, all coming off there. They're going to be free agents.
Right.
And can you list real quickly the important priority of who the Heat are going to try to secure first? And is there something that one of them can do to maybe raise it during this bubble?
Yeah, this is a great topic we've talked about a lot, and I've gone back and forth. I think it's changed a little bit now because the money, they don't know. I mean, I've talked to people inside the organization. They don't know what the money's going to be. They know where they're positioned relative to other teams, and I think they were 4th in terms of amount of space compared to other teams. But when they made that was a big reason for the Justice trade. It cleared some of this out. But I do think it's changed a little. I think it depends on what you're looking for. I think Goran Dragic is first. I think Goran's first for a couple of reasons. One, they can pay him a big balloon number now and get a promise from him that he'll take less in the second and third years afterwards. He wants to stay. He's a unique player. He fits everything that they do. But here's the other thing. Jimmy loves him.
Yeah, we've seen that.
And they're not going to – they are consulting Jimmy on a lot of these decisions. And I just think Jimmy wants – and we don't know that UD is going to be on the roster next year. I think you need to have another guy there with Jimmy. I think Goran's first. It's another reason I think that the Nunn thing is a little up in the air. The second guy is a tough call. They really wanted Jay Crowder. They've wanted Jay Crowder for years. This was not just about Iguodala. So they like Jay Crowder a lot, and they feel like his skill set, like other people say it's replaceable, but they don't because it's his physicality and versatility. He gives you both of those things. It's not the three-point shooting, but it's his ability to kind of plug holes for you everywhere. You need a 4, you need a 3, you need a defender. He can do all those different things. And they view him as a kind of a perfect small ball 4. And so they like him a lot. They love DJJ's potential. And obviously, Myers has become sort of an absolute favorite for them, not just because the way he conducts himself, which has been exemplary, but also, his influence on Bam, the trust level that Bam has with him. And he helps. He's a stout player. He plugs a hole for you in the middle, and he can make threes, which stretches the floor for Bam and takes the pressure off Bam until he can kind of figure out how to get aligned with his jumper. I would say if I would have to go 2, 3, 4, I think the DJJ decision is going to be made for them. I think somebody's going to offer them more money than they want to give. I think Jay and Myers are going to come in below those numbers. And so I would say probably Jay second, Myers third for 1 year deal for 1 year deals, which I think they'll both. I think that all 3 guys are going to take 1 year deals. I think Dragic, Myers. I think they'll bring him back at 1 year. I think Andre, they'll exercise the option. And, then Andre can be a contract they throw into something. And I think then it becomes, do you keep Kendrick around or you try to upgrade the position? Can you get Oladipo? Do you throw in another of these pieces there? Is there interest in Kelly Olynyk in the last year of his deal? There might be. at that number? And is Chris Silva ready to kind of fill a role? It's where you keep Myers and Bam, and maybe then you have Silva and you bring in a guy at the minimum, to compete as another big. So I think the real benefit they have right now is they have so much flexibility. There's so many ways they can go on the roster. But all four guys you mentioned, Matt, have said they want to be in Miami.
Okay.
All four of them. I mean, they've been blatant about it. They've been open about it. I mean, Jay said it on our podcast. Myers is he's like a culture warrior. DJJ, I don't want to play anywhere else. And Goran has told me many, many times over the years. I mean, I think the only situation that Goran would have been okay with was Dallas. And he was almost traded there because he loves Luka. But other than that, I don't think Goran wants to go anywhere else. He was very happy to stay.
Cool. I think Ryan froze. Hey,
I think he did.
Tyler Hero was playing point yesterday. Is that real, or is that going to be a decoy?
No, I think they need another ball handler. I think they need one more. I mean, they're trying to take some of this burden away from Jimmy. I don't think that anybody but Jimmy or Goran and Kendrick Nunn at times will be the primary ball handler. But I think we've seen Bam as a secondary ball handler quite a bit. I think we're going to see Iguodala more as a secondary ball handler. They started that last night. And that is the next evolution for Tyler Hero. I mean, if you look at the Devin Bookers, the Trae Youngs, I mean, Steph Curry has kind of converted to point. When he came in the league, it wasn't quite clear he was going to play point. But you look at Trae Young and Devin Booker. I mean, both of those guys are guys who can pull up and, gun you down off the dribble. Tyler's developing that game. He's finding ways to get space. Now it's just a question of making the decision. There was a really good thread put out on Twitter by Steve Jones Jr., who's the son of Steve Jones, who was a longtime NBA player and a broadcaster. He used to be on with Snapper Jones. He used to be on with Bill Walton. And it was talking about what they do, what he does in the pick and roll. That Tyler in the scrimmage was starting to make some of those pick and roll decisions. And I think that's what they want to get him some reps doing, because especially late in games, remember, if they're going to play Bam and they're going to play Jimmy and they're going to play Duncan, and let's say Andre Iguodala is another one, then a lot of nights it's going to be a decision between Hero and Dragic. Well, if you're taking Goran off the floor, you're taking away, and he's not a traditional point guard either, but he has played point guard. You're taking away Goran Dragic's competence as a playmaker and a ball handler. Well, you need someone else to fill that role. Otherwise, it's going to all fall on Jimmy and Bam. And so I think that's what they're looking at with Tyler Hero, which is, can he create for himself, but not only that, for others. He's a pretty good passer. I mean, I was surprised. He showed some of that starting in Summer League. He doesn't have to be an elite passer, but he just has to be good enough that he can get some other guys involved. And they want to see if it's there. I mean, look, if they're going to get an Oladipo or a Beal, Tyler Hero may end up starting with one of those guys in the backcourt. And Oladipo is not a true point, but he's played it. And it may end up being, going to the future, if you had Oladipo, Hero, and Jimmy as your three perimeters, you won't have a point guard, but you'll have three guys who can play point for stretches of the game. And I think that's the evolution. That's where Eric has moved to.
Yeah. Ethan, I know you're going to be at the game for the Boston Celtics game, and I know you're going to be at the Toronto Raptors, probably two of the tougher games that we're going to have. Right. Everybody, make sure you follow Five Reasons Sports, because nobody's going to give us more info than Ethan does.
Hopefully. We've gotten some things right lately. I'll say that. Nobody wants to credit us, but we've gotten some things right. Check out the Five Reasons Sports account, but also fivereasonsports.com. And obviously all of our other stuff. Also, I should take it out, but next time we do this, Biscayne Bay Brewing, that's our sponsor. You got one there?
Right here.
You got one there. Biscayne Bay Brewing. That's the Marlins Lager. I got some IPA here, so I got my daughter here tonight. I try not to drink on the nights she's here, but I will be popping one open. And all of the other sponsors of the Five Reasons Sports Network. If you want to sponsor this show, reach out to Matt. And he'll help you out.
And make sure you catch the next watch party. It was a really good watch party yesterday, so make sure you guys come on next time.
Yep, no doubt. Yeah, we're going to do that. All right, thanks, Matt. We'll catch up with Ryan at some point. It's the only time his mouth's not moving. I don't know where he is.